Hey everyone, and welcome back. You know how we always say data is king?
It's how we learn and grow.
Exactly. Well, today we're going to look at some pretty cool data about Le Podcast de Philippe and how it's doing on different platforms.
This should be interesting.
To be honest, even I was kind of surprised by the results. Ready to see which platform is in the lead?
Hit me with it.
All right, so as you know, the whole point of this deep dive is to compare how Le Podcast de Philippe is performing on Spotify, Amazon Podcast, and YouTube.
Got to cover all the bases, right?
Exactly. Now, remember, this data is specific to Le Podcast de Philippe, so it might not be the same for other podcasts. But
Every podcast is unique, so it makes sense.
for sure. Okay, so after about 2.5 months, you ready for this? YouTube is killing it.
Whoa, really? YouTube?
I know, right? We're talking 101 subscribers on YouTube and 197 hours of listening.
That's impressive.
Compare that to Spotify, which only has 3 subscribers and 10 hours of listening.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
It really is.
Yeah.
And Amazon Podcasts? Well, there's not even enough data yet to really look at.
So it seems like YouTube is the place to be for Le Podcast de Philippe.
It really does, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? Philippe is going to keep tracking this data throughout 2025.
Makes sense. Got to see how things evolve.
Yep. And he's focusing on YouTube, even thinking about monetizing the channel. Kind of a cool experiment in real-time podcast growth, don't you think?
Definitely. I'm curious to see how it plays out. Now, let's not forget about the content of Le Podcast de Philippe itself.
Oh, yeah, this is where it gets really interesting.
It goes way beyond just like chatting about AI news. This podcast is a playground for AI.
It's like hands-on learning.
Exactly. Every episode tackles this big question. Jusqu'où peuvent-elles aller?
Which, for our listeners who don't speak French, means
How far can they go?
it's all about pushing the limits of AI, exploring its potential, and maybe even uncovering a few risks along the way, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. And they're not just theorizing, they're actually experimenting with AI in the podcast.
Oh, yeah. They look at AI's ability to mimic human emotions and all that. Like, how well can it navigate tricky situations?
And can it actually solve real-world problems? Remember that episode on AI debating ethics?
Oh, that one was mind-blowing. Like, it really made you think.
Made me question everything. It makes you wonder how long before AI becomes indistinguishable from us.
Chills. Literal chills. Okay, so another cool thing about Le Podcast de Philippe is that it's structured like a conversation between, get this, AI avatars.
Wait, really? That's wild.
I know. And it's all guided by Philippe's research. It's like listening in on a super intelligent AI chat.
Okay, that's definitely something I need to check out.
And here's the best part. It's a totally open dialogue. Philippe wants to hear what you think, what you're worried about, your own experiences with AI. It's about building a community around this crazy, amazing tech.
That's what's so cool about podcasts, right? They spark conversations. And this topic, it's not just some sci-fi fantasy anymore. AI is here, it's impacting us all, and the more we talk about it, the better we can understand it.
Exactly. AI is not just out there anymore, right? It's right here, right now.
And understanding its possibilities, but also its downsides, that's how we make sure we use it for good.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So, to sum up, Le Podcast de Philippe is doing some really cool things, both with its content and with how it's growing on YouTube. It's all about experimentation and pushing those boundaries.
Yeah, it really challenges you to think differently about AI.
Totally. If you want to join in on the conversation, subscribe to Le Podcast de Philippe on YouTube, Spotify, and Amazon Podcast. You won't regret it.
And who knows, maybe you'll even be inspired to start your own AI experiment.
That's what we like to hear. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. See you next time.
Until then, stay curious.